He used to say I was too emotional, too sensitive, too giving. But what he really meant was too easy to use. I cooked, cleaned, forgave, and waited. Waited for a thank you that never came, for love that sounded like maybe later. Every time I cried, he called it drama. Every time I stayed, he called it loyalty. And every time I broke a little more, he called it my fault. But last night, something in me went quiet. Not weak, quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a woman remembers who she is. So here I am, finally done apologizing for being the one who cared too much. My name is Evelyn Carter. And this is the day I stopped loving people who only loved my silence. The afternoon sunlight poured through my kitchen window, turning the dust in the air into glitter. I remember thinking how pretty it looked, almost like the dust was dancing for me. While I sat at the table polishing a small wooden box I hadn't touched in years. My jewelry box, Charles's box. It still smelled faintly of him, sandalwood and that aftershave he used to wear when we went to church on Sundays. Inside were the tiny stories of our life together, the gold bracelet he bought after our first tax refund, the thin silver chain from the year we almost divorced but didn't, the diamond pendant he surprised me with on our 25th anniversary. I used to joke that he spent more time shining me than he did himself, and he'd laugh and say, "Well, baby, you the one I want shining when I'm gone." He's been gone 12 years now. Sometimes I still catch myself turning to tell him something and then remembering there's only that quiet, polite silence that widows learn to live with. That day, I was sitting there polishing the pieces one by one, not for vanity, just for memory, when I heard heels clicking down the hallway. Tanya never took her shoes off when she came in. I used to mind it, but over time I learned not to fight small battles. Save your strength for the ones that matter. "Hey, Mama G," she called, her voice sugary but sharp around the edges. "What you doing with all that?" I looked up and smiled, polite as ever. "Just cleaning these old things. Thought I'd give them a little shine." She leaned against the doorway, arms folded, scanning the jewelry like a shopper at Macy's. "You don't wear any of it." "Not much reason to anymore," I said softly, "but they remind me of your father-in-law. He had good taste." Tanya smirked, that small curl of the lip she does when she's pretending to be gentle. "You don't really need all that, though, do you? You hardly go out except to church. These things just sitting here collecting dust." Her words pricked me, but I kept my tone steady. Maybe so. But sometimes it's nice having something beautiful near you. She stepped closer, the scent of her expensive perfume filling the room. Something floral and loud. "I could take them to get cleaned properly," she offered, already reaching for the box. "Make sure they're stored right. You know, keep them safe." Before I could answer, her hands were on the lid. She lifted it, peered inside, and smiled like she'd just opened a treasure chest. "Oh my God, look at that diamond! Marcus told me you had a collection, but this..." She whistled low. "This is worth something." I laughed softly to hide my discomfort. "They've been mine a long time. Charles had the jeweler mark each one. He said he wanted folks to know who they belonged to." She didn't seem to hear me. Her fingers moved fast, gathering the pieces and laying them neatly back in the box. "Honestly, Mama G, these things should be insured or something. You know how crime is these days. Let me take them to the jeweler tomorrow, get them appraised, cleaned, all official." "That's sweet of you, Tanya, but..." She cut me off, voice cheerful, words quick. "No but, it's no trouble. I'll handle it. You shouldn't worry about stuff like this at your age." At my age? The words hit like a pinprick under the skin. Small, but it stings long after. Before I could object again, she closed the lid with a gentle snap. "There. I'll bring it back once it's all polished and insured. Promise." And just like that, she walked out, heels clicking, perfume trailing behind her like a flag of victory. Through the window, I watched her get into that shiny white SUV Marcus bought on payments, the one she always said was technically ours. The engine roared, and within seconds both she and my box of memories were gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty patch of sunlight where the box had been. My hands were still shining with polish, and the rag in my fingers smelled like lemon oil. I told myself she meant well, that she was helping. But deep down, something in my chest ached the way it does when a storm's coming and your joints start warning you. Marcus came by later that evening. He kissed my cheek distractedly, scrolling through his phone. "Tanya said she took the jewelry for cleaning," he said. "That's good. You don't need to be worrying about stuff like that." "Marcus," I said softly, "did she tell you where she's taking it?" He shrugged. "Someplace downtown, I guess. She's got a friend who does appraisals." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Charles's hands, strong, dark, rough from years at the plant, sliding that diamond ring onto my finger all those years ago. He had said, "This here ain't about the stone glow, it's about the story it carries." I got up, opened my nightstand drawer, and pulled out the old receipt Charles kept from Reynolds Jewelers. Written in his neat block handwriting were the words, "Custom engraving, GW, love always, CW," inside the main stone. A lump rose in my throat. I whispered into the dark, "Charles, I think someone just stole our story." The next morning, when the phone rang, I didn't expect the voice on the other end to sound so familiar. "Mrs. Williams," the man said, "this is Mr. Reynolds from Reynolds Jewelers. I believe we've met years ago. I just wanted to confirm. Did you recently send someone to appraise your diamond set?" My heart froze mid-beat. "No," I said slowly. "Why do you ask?" There was a pause, respectful, uneasy. "Well, ma'am," he said, "because the young woman who brought it in said it belonged to her. But when I looked under the scope, I found something interesting. A name engraved inside the main diamond." He hesitated, as though unsure if he should go on. "What name?" I whispered. "Yours, ma'am, Gloria Williams, clear as day." I gripped the phone tighter, forcing my voice to stay steady. "What did you do with it?" "I kept it safe," he said. "Didn't let her take it." I closed my eyes and exhaled. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Please, keep it safe." When I hung up, the house was silent again, that kind of silence that feels alive. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away, and I thought to myself, maybe that storm I felt last night wasn't just in my bones. That night, I didn't touch dinner. The house smelled of the stew I'd left simmering on the stove, but I couldn't eat a thing. I sat in my living room with the phone still warm in my hand, replaying Mr. Reynolds' voice over and over in my head. "Your name is engraved inside the diamond." He'd said it so gently, like a doctor giving a diagnosis he knew would change everything. I kept staring at my reflection in the dark window. A woman who once had so much sparkle in her life, now dimmed by years of silence and sacrifice. I turned on the lamp beside me. The light hit the family photos on the wall. Marcus as a baby, grinning with his 2 missing front teeth. Charles in his Sunday suit, proud as a preacher. There was one picture from our 25th anniversary that I'd always loved. Charles and I dancing in our living room, barefoot, holding a slice of store-bought cake between us. He had given me that diamond necklace that night, the same one Tanya tried to sell. He'd said, "If anything ever happens to me, Glow, you keep this close. It's got more than a stone inside, so it's got your name and mine bound together." I used to laugh at him for being sentimental. Now I wished I'd listened harder. The jewelry wasn't just decoration. It was my story. Our story. Every piece was a memory carved into gold. The bracelet with the heart charm. He bought it when I got promoted to head nurse after 20 years of night shifts. He'd said, "You earn this, baby. Not because it's shiny, but because you are." The small pearl earrings. A gift after our first real fight. We'd argued about money, about him wanting to start his own auto shop, me worrying about stability. He'd come home late, holding a tiny box, and said, "I figured you could forgive me easier if I gave you something that lasts longer than my temper." and I had. The wedding ring was simple, not much worth to a jeweler, but to me it was a circle that never broke. I wore it every day, even after his passing, because I could still feel his promise in it. I thought about all those years we'd struggled, the long nights when he'd worked double shifts and I'd come home from the hospital smelling of antiseptic and coffee. We didn't have much, but we had enough to love each other well, and when things got better, he started buying me small pieces, never to show off, but to remind me we made it through. That's what Tanya would never understand. To her, gold was something you wore to prove a point. To me, it was something you earned through a lifetime of holding on. I picked up the phone and tried calling Marcus, but it went to voicemail. His voice, cheerful, distant, told me to leave a message, love you, bye. I didn't leave one. What could I say? Your wife stole my memories? No, I wasn't ready for that conversation. Instead, I walked to my bedroom, opened the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed, and pulled out a velvet pouch. Inside was the one thing I'd never let anyone touch, a small gold locket Charles had given me on our 10th anniversary. It had our wedding picture inside. The clasp was a little broken now, but I still wore it on Sundays. I ran my thumb over the metal until it warmed under my skin. "You'd know what to do, Charles," I whispered. "You always did." A gust of wind rattled the window. The night outside felt heavy, like the air before a storm. I could feel something shifting. Not just anger, something older, deeper. The kind of strength that wakes up in women who've been quiet too long. Around 9, my neighbor Evelyn called. She's lived across the street since our kids were little. "Gloria, you okay, honey? I saw Tanya leaving earlier with that box, and she looked mighty pleased with herself." I hesitated. She said she was taking it to get cleaned. Evelyn snorted softly. "Cleaned? That woman wouldn't clean a dish if her life depended on it." Her voice cracked a small smile out of me. "You always were the blunt one." "Just keep your eyes open, that's all," she said. "Folks show you who they are. You just gotta believe 'em." After I hung up, I sat at my vanity table. Bare now, the spot where the jewelry box had sat for decades, just a pale square in the wood. I stared at that empty space the way you stare at a photograph of someone who's gone missing. I realized it wasn't just the jewelry that was gone. It was a piece of me that I'd never thought anyone could take. That night, sleep came in fits. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Tanya's hands, polished nails, quick fingers, scooping up my past like it was loose change. By dawn, I decided, no more waiting. I brewed my coffee, strong and black like Charles used to make it, and sat by the window. Birds were chirping outside, indifferent, cheerful. And it struck me how life keeps moving no matter who betrays you. At exactly 8:30, the phone rang again. "Mrs. Williams," Mr. Reynolds said, "I just wanted you to know I've secured your jewelry in my vault. I also—" Might have recognized the woman. She came in last month with another customer trying to sell a pair of antique earrings. Didn't go through. Something felt off. I swallowed hard. So this wasn't the first time. "I'd say no, ma'am. You want me to contact the police?" I thought about it. About Marcus, about the embarrassment, the gossip. The part of me that had always protected her family wanted to say no. But another part, the part that remembered every sacrifice, every time I'd been told, "You don't need that anymore," said something else entirely. "Not yet," I said. "Let's just keep this between us for now. I want to see what she does next." Mr. Reynolds hesitated, then said, "Understood. I'll keep everything safe." After I hung up, I realized my hands were trembling, not from fear, from awakening. For the first time in years, I wasn't the passive one. I was the one holding the cards. I looked toward that empty vanity and whispered, "You think I don't need my jewelry anymore, Tanya. You're about to learn there's a difference between wearing gold and earning it." The morning after Mr. Reynolds' call, I woke before the sun rose. Sleep had never found me, only a string of thoughts twisting through the dark. one for every piece of jewelry Tanya had stolen. At 6 o'clock, I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee when I saw headlights sweep across my curtains. Tanya's white SUV. She was leaving early. I peeked through the blinds just in time to see her toss her long hair over her shoulder. Makeup done, phone in one hand, jewelry box in the other. She looked like a woman on her way to brunch, not a thief on her way to sell another person's memories. The coffee turned bitter on my tongue. I could have rushed out. I could have screamed, but I didn't. Charles used to tell me, "Baby, when people dig their own hole, don't stop them. Just make sure you're not standing in it with them." So I stayed quiet, and I started planning. By 9, the house was filled with that strange stillness that comes after betrayal, the kind where even your own furniture feels like it's waiting to see what you'll do. I pulled out my old phone book, yes, the paper one, and flipped to the page marked R. There it was, Reynolds Jewelers, Savannah Belvede. When I called, he picked up on the first ring. "Reynolds Jewelers, this is Mr. Reynolds speaking." "Good morning, sir," I said, steadying my voice. "This is Gloria Williams." A pause, then warmth flooded his tone. "Mrs. Williams, I'm glad you called. I was hoping to speak with you again." "I just wanted to thank you for calling yesterday," I said. "You might have saved me more than money." "I suspected as much," he said quietly. "The young woman, your daughter-in-law, I believe? She was persistent. Insisted you'd given her the jewelry as a transition gift. I didn't buy it. No one parts with a diamond like that." "Transition gift," I repeated, the word sour. "That's a new one." She got a bit defensive when I asked for paperwork. I told her all high-value appraisals need proof of ownership. She left, but I have her signature on the form. I can send it to you. I smiled faintly. "Please do." He hesitated. "Mrs. Williams, I don't mean to intrude, but I've been in this business 50 years. I've seen sons rob fathers and wives betray husbands. If I were you, I'd protect yourself. Quietly." His voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen too much, and somehow it comforted me. That quiet knowing between older souls who've both lived through their share of storms. "I intend to," I said softly. "Thank you." After I hung up, I went to the bedroom closet and pulled out the fireproof box Charles had once labeled Howson Legal. Inside were our old insurance documents, bank receipts, even a few love letters I'd tucked away. There it was, the appraisal from 1999, signed by Mr. Reynolds himself, clear as day, Gloria J. Williams, owner. Charles's handwriting in the corner, jewelry pieces insured for full replacement value, engravings noted. I smiled. My husband had always been thorough. I made copies of everything. One for the house, one for the bank, and one for my lawyer, Mr. Hinton, though I hadn't called him yet. I wanted evidence first, outrage later. Around noon, the phone rang again. I recognized the number. Tanya's. For a moment, I just stared at it. The screen glowed like a dare. Finally, I answered. "Hey, Mama G." Her voice was bright, fake sweet. "Just wanted to let you know I dropped the jewelry off for cleaning and insurance. Everything's going great." "Is that so?" I said, keeping my voice calm. "Which jeweler?" "Oh, someplace downtown. They're professionals. I'll bring it all back soon." "Downtown, huh?" I said softly. "Wouldn't happen to be Reynolds Jewelers, would it?" Silence, the kind that stretches long enough to hear your own heartbeat. Then, "What? No, different one. Why?" I let her squirm. "Oh, nothing, baby. Just curious. I've been with Mr. Reynolds for years." Her tone sharpened. "You talked to him?" "I did," I said, still calm. "He's an old friend. Said someone brought in a set that looked mighty familiar." She laughed nervously. "Oh, that's funny. Must be someone else's. I gotta run, Mama G. I'll call you later." She hung up before I could reply. I stared at the phone for a long time, then set it down gently. If this were years ago, I might have cried, but this time something steadier took root inside me. It wasn't rage. It was purpose. Around 3, Evelyn dropped by with sweet tea. She always had good timing. "Girl," she said, sitting herself down, "I could see your face from the porch. You're cooking something up in that head of yours." I smiled. "You ever heard the phrase, 'quiet storm,' Evelyn?" She chuckled. "That's you all right. What's the plan?" "Not yet," I said, "but I'm going to let her think she's safe. Let her walk right into the truth." Evelyn leaned in. "Need a witness?" "Maybe later." We both laughed, but under the laughter was something heavy, a shared understanding that sometimes justice isn't about shouting, it's about waiting. That evening, I sat outside as the sky turned pink and gold. I watched Tanya's SUV pull into her driveway across town on my phone, not because I was spying, but because I knew the pattern now. She always flaunted what she took before she hit it. Her social media pinged a new post. "Finally making moves. Hard work pays off." The caption glowed beneath a picture of her manicured hand, a diamond glinting faintly at her wrist. My diamond. I took a slow breath and whispered, "Keep smiling, baby. You don't even know the storm you started." Then I went inside and began writing in my notebook, every call, every time, every word. Because when it's your word against theirs, you make sure your story shines brighter than the lies. By the time Saturday rolled around, I'd already decided what kind of woman I was going to be in this fight. Not the angry kind, not the loud kind, but the kind who wins without ever raising her voice, the kind Charles would have been proud of. That morning, I called Marcus and said, "Baby, why don't you two come by for dinner tonight? It's been too long." He sounded surprised but relieved. "Sure thing, Ma. Tanya'll love that." "I'll make her favorite," I said. "That honey-baked chicken she likes so much." I hung up and smiled to myself. When a snake thinks you're opening the door, you're really just showing it the exit. All afternoon I cooked. Collard greens, baked chicken, candied yams. The whole house smelled like love and lies. While the oven hummed, I polished the table and set 3 places, the silver gleaming in the soft lamplight. The 4th seat, Charles's old spot, I left empty, out of habit, out of respect. At 6, their car pulled into the driveway. I smoothed my apron and stood in the doorway. Marcus came in, first flowers in hand, his smile too practiced to be real. Tanya followed, wearing a new cream blouse, the kind that said, "I don't sweat guilt." "Hey, Mama G," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek, that sugary perfume hitting me like an old memory. "You look beautiful." "Thank you, baby," I said sweetly. "You too. Come on in." The dinner started simple enough. Laughter, small talk, the sound of silverware on porcelain. I asked about Marcus's work at the auto shop, and he talked about how business was slow. I asked Tanya about her new consulting job, and she used a lot of fancy words that never added up to a real paycheck. Typical. But I didn't interrupt. I just listened. Calm, careful, waiting. When dessert came out, my peach cobbler, the one Tanya always said she could never get right, I poured coffee and watched her closely. That's when I saw it, the bracelet, gold, heart-shaped charm, my initials etched on the back. She was wearing it right there at my table like a badge of pride. I smiled. "That's a lovely bracelet, Tanya." She froze for just a second before regaining her poise. "Oh, thank you. It was a gift." "Really?" I said, voice soft as butter. "From who?" Marcus glanced at her, confused. "Didn't you say you found that one in your jewelry box, babe?" Tanya shot him a quick glare. "Oh, right, yeah, I mean, it's one I've had for a while. Just forgot about it." I leaned back in my chair. Funny. Looks exactly like one Charles bought me the year I retired. He even had it engraved. See right there on the charm? GW? She looked down quickly, covering it with her hand. "Oh, must be a coincidence." "Maybe so," I said. "But coincidences sure do sparkle bright these days." The silence stretched so long I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Marcus cleared his throat. "Ma, what are you implying?" "Nothing, baby," I said, smiling gently. "Just saying some things look familiar, that's all." Tanya tried to change the subject. "This cobbler is amazing, Mama G. You should open a bakery." I nodded. Maybe I should. And maybe I should start labeling my recipes. before someone else tries to claim them. She gave me that nervous, high-pitched laugh people use when they know the walls are closing in. I looked her straight in the eye and said softly, "Tanya, you still planning to pick up my jewelry next week? You mentioned having it cleaned and insured." The color drained from her face. "Oh, yes, of course. I just need to coordinate with the jeweler. It's taking longer than expected." "I see." I let the words hang there, sweet and heavy. "You know, I spoke with Mr. Reynolds. He said he'd be happy to send me the updated appraisal himself." She blinked. "Mr. Reynolds?" "Mm-hmm," I said. "You know, the jeweler you didn't go to." Marcus shifted in his chair, confused. "What's going on?" I smiled gently at him, the way mothers do when they're about to teach a lesson that hurts. "Just a misunderstanding, I'm sure. Right, Tanya?" She forced a smile. "Of course." I stood, gathering the plates. "You two sit. I'll get the coffee." In the kitchen, I took my time. I could hear the soft murmur of their voices in the dining room, Tanya whispering urgently, Marcus sounding confused and defensive. I let them talk. When I returned, they were both smiling too wide, the kind of smile that hides panic. I set the coffee down. "You know," I said casually, "Charles used to say people show you who they are when they think you're not watching." Marcus frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, nothing." I smiled again. "Just, I've been watching lately." No one spoke after that. We finished dessert in silence, the tension thick enough to slice with a butter knife. When they left, Tanya hugged me stiffly. Her voice trembled just a little. "Thank you for dinner, Mama G." I patted her back, leaning close enough to whisper, "You're welcome, baby. I'll see you soon. Maybe sooner than you think." Her body stiffened. She pulled away, muttering something about traffic, and hurried out the door. From the window, I watched them drive off. Marcus's hands gripping the wheel, Tanya turned toward him, already talking fast. And there, right before the taillights disappeared, I saw her glance back at the house. Her eyes met mine through the glass, and for the first time, she didn't smile. When I locked the door behind me, the house felt different. Lighter, somehow. Maybe because for the first time in months, I wasn't the one being fooled. I walked to my vanity, touched the empty space where my jewelry box once sat, and whispered to Charles, "Your girl's learning, baby. She's learning to fight quiet." The night after that dinner, I didn't bother turning on the TV. I just sat in Charles's old armchair, staring at the empty table where their plates had been. The smell of cinnamon and coffee still lingered in the air. The scent of old memories and new betrayals. It wasn't anger I felt anymore. It was something colder, something sharper. The kind of calm that only comes when you've finally decided what kind of war you're willing to fight. I got up, turned off the lamp, and went to the hallway closet, the one Charles used to call his secret fortress. He'd built it himself, hidden a little fireproof lockbox behind the coats. I hadn't opened it in years. My hands trembled slightly as I twisted the combination. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt like opening a door to the past. Inside were envelopes stacked neatly, each labeled in his handwriting: insurance, house, bank statements, car titles, and finally jewelry, Gloria. I took that last one and sat down on the bed. The paper was yellowed at the edges, but the words were clear. Policy. Nadir 42761, Jewel Insurance. Registered owner. Gloria J. Williams. Attached was a typed appraisal list from 1999. Every item described in detail: size, carat, engraving, and serial number. At the bottom, his signature and a note in his handwriting. Mr. Reynolds has duplicates of these records for safekeeping. I exhaled slowly. Charles had always been 2 steps ahead of the world, and now, even from the grave, he was still protecting me. But tucked inside that same folder was something I hadn't expected, a small photograph of us in front of Reynolds Jewelers, both of us smiling, me holding that little velvet box. On the back, he'd written, "For when people forget what's yours, baby, The truth always leaves a mark. That was Charles. Never one for big speeches, but always full of meaning. And I realized something then. Tanya might have taken my jewelry, but she'd underestimated the one thing she couldn't see: my history. I spent the next hour scanning and printing copies of everything. Serial numbers, receipts, photos. I labeled each page, slid them into plastic sleeves, and placed them in a neat binder. Then I opened a fresh page in my notebook and wrote the first line of my own record. March 12th. Tanya took my jewelry under false pretense of cleaning. March 14th. Confirmed attempt to sell via Reynolds Jewelers. I smiled faintly. Let her think I was just another lonely old widow with shaky hands and a soft heart. She didn't know I'd spent 40 years in a hospital ward managing chaos and catching lies before they spread. I'd learned to spot deceit the same way I'd learned to read EKGs, one pulse at a time. As I worked, a thought came over me, a strange, bitter-sweet one. If Charles were here, he'd be sitting at that desk beside me, reading through every page, saying things like, "You're the smart one, Glow. I just build things. You see through 'em?" Around midnight, I took a break and poured myself some tea. Outside, rain had started falling in slow, heavy drops, tapping against the window like a heartbeat. I looked out into the dark and thought about Tanya, probably asleep in silk sheets bought with Marcus's money and other people's kindness. She probably believed she'd gotten away clean, but she didn't know there was a paper trail long enough to wrap around her whole lie. The next morning, I went to see Evelyn. She opened the door before I even knocked. "Well, look at that face. You found something, didn't you?" "I did," I said, holding up the folder. "Charles left me proof." She ushered me inside, eyes gleaming. Lord, that man always was 3 steps ahead. I sat at her kitchen table and spread everything out. Evelyn studied each page like it was gospel. "You know what this means, right?" she said. "This ain't just insurance. This is your shield. You could go to the police right now." "I could," I said quietly. "But not yet. I want to see how deep she'll dig." Evelyn tilted her head. "You're playing the long game." "I'm playing the right one," I said. "I want her to think she's safe. People show their true colors when they think no one's watching." Evelyn smiled knowingly. "You got a little preacher in you, Glow. Maybe, or maybe I'm just tired of being quiet." When I left her house, the rain had stopped. The air smelled clean, like something had been washed away. I drove straight to the bank and opened a safety deposit box, stored 1 copy of the documents there. The clerk asked if I wanted to list an emergency contact. I said, "Mr. Reynolds." She looked surprised. I smiled. He's an old friend who keeps things safe. When I got home, I placed another copy in Charles's lockbox and one under the floorboard beneath my bed, just in case. Then I poured myself a fresh cup of tea, sat by the window, and started writing another note in my notebook. March 15th. Tanya wore my gold bracelet at dinner. Confirmed engraving visible. No denial from Marcus. Every word was slow, deliberate. It felt like stitching a wound shut, one that had been bleeding too long. I leaned back, looked at the folder, and whispered, "All right, Charles. You gave me the map. Now it's my turn to follow it." For the first time since this began, I didn't feel powerless. I felt protected. The kind of protected that doesn't come from locks or lawyers, but from knowing the truth sits in your hands, waiting for the right moment to shine. That night, as I drifted off to sleep, I thought about Tanya's voice saying, "You don't need your jewelry anymore." And I smiled into the dark, whispering to myself, "Baby, I don't need it, because I already got something she never will. A man who thought ahead, and a mind that's still sharper than her greed." For a few days, I played my part, the sweet, unsuspecting mother-in-law who just wanted peace in her golden years. Tanya called twice during that week, both times pretending everything was normal. "Hey, Mama G, just checking in. The jewelry's almost ready. They're still polishing the big one," she said once, her voice light and fake like frosting on a spoiled cake. Another time she asked, "Do you want me to bring them over this weekend or next?" I said what any woman with patience and a plan would say, "Oh, no rush, baby. I trust you." Trust. That word tasted bitter on my tongue, because the only person I trusted now was a man who'd known my husband and my story long before Tanya ever came along, Mr. Reynolds. On Thursday, I drove downtown to his shop. The bell above the door chimed softly when I entered, that same familiar scent of metal polish and cedar greeting me. He looked up from behind the counter, and his face softened. "Mrs. Williams," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I was hoping I'd see you." He ushered me into his office, a small space lined with framed photos and old velvet boxes. I sat down, clutching the folder Charles had once labeled Jewelry, Gloria. "I brought these," I said, sliding the papers across the desk. "The insurance documents. Every piece has an engraving or a serial number." He flipped through them slowly, nodding. He really did think of everything. "That was Charles," I said, smiling faintly. "Always one step ahead." He leaned back. "I've kept your jewelry secure in my vault, ma'am. But the young woman, Tanya, she'll be back. I can feel it. She's desperate." "I know," I said, "and I need her to come back." Mr. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" "I want you to act like the appraisal is still in progress. Tell her the diamonds need verification before payment. That'll keep her comfortable, make her think she still has a chance." A slow grin spread across his face. "Abate and wait." "Exactly. The longer she feels safe, the louder her lies will get." He nodded. "I'll record every interaction. For documentation. It's standard practice anyway." I smiled. "Thank you. Let her believe she's clever. That's how fools walk themselves to truth." Before I left, he handed me a sealed envelope. "Just in case things go sideways, inside is a written statement and photos of the jewelry, all dated and signed. Evidence." I took it with both hands. "You're a good man, Mr. Reynolds." He shook his head. "No, ma'am, just someone who respects a woman who knows her worth." Back home, Evelyn was watering her azaleas when I pulled into the driveway. She leaned on the fence, watching me with that knowing look she always had. "You look like a woman with a secret," she said. "Maybe I am." She smiled. "You found your thunder." I laughed. "Just a little lightning for now." Inside, I placed the envelope in my desk drawer and locked it. Then I sat down with my notebook. March 21st, visited Mr. Reynolds, coordinated, evidence secure. As I wrote, I remembered something Charles used to say whenever he fixed the car. Measure twice, cut once. He meant it for carpentry, but it worked just as well for revenge. The next evening, Marcus stopped by unannounced. He looked tired. That kind of tired that sits in a man's shoulders, not his eyes. "Hey, Ma," he said, scratching his head. "Tanya told me you've been calling jewelers. Is everything okay?" I smiled softly. "Of course, baby. Just checking on my things." He frowned. "You don't have to worry about that. Tanya said she's taking care of it." "Oh, I know she is," I said. "I just like to be informed." He hesitated. "She said you were acting weird at dinner." "Did she?" I tilted my head. "Maybe she's just nervous. People tend to be when they have something to hide." He shifted uncomfortably. "Ma, please don't start something. We're just trying to help." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. The boy who used to run barefoot through the yard, now standing there defending the woman, stealing from his own mother. "I'm not starting anything, Marcus," I said quietly, "but I will finish it." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I just don't want drama." "Then make sure you're not standing on the wrong side of it." For a second, I saw Charles in him, that flicker of conscience he used to have before Tanya's voice started replacing his own, but he just nodded, mumbled a goodbye, and left. When the door closed behind him, the air felt heavy again. I sat on the couch, staring at the family portrait above the mantel. Me, Charles, and a little boy who once promised, "I'll always protect you, Mama." Promises change, but truth doesn't. The next morning, Mr. Reynolds called. "She came back," he said, "just like you said she would. And she's pushing hard to finalize a sale, offered a discount if I paid cash, claimed she needed to cover an emergency expense. I told her it'd take 2 more days for valuation. She didn't like that." I smiled. "Good, let her stew." "There's something else," he said. "She left a form behind with her signature. Matches the one from last week." "Perfect," I said. "Keep everything." After we hung up, I went to my window and watched the sunlight spill over the garden. I thought of Tanya pacing in her fancy kitchen, waiting for money that would never come. I imagined her rehearsing lies, texting Marcus, maybe even cursing my name under her breath. But none of that mattered now, because while she was busy selling glitter, I was collecting proof. That night, Evelyn came over with sweet tea and that grin she always wears when she knows something's brewing. "You ready for whatever's next?" she asked. I looked out the window at the moon reflecting in my garden pond. Calm, steady, untouchable. "Oh, I'm ready," I said. "I just want to see what she does when the world finally tells her who she really is." Evelyn chuckled. "You always did have a poet's way with vengeance." I smiled faintly. "I don't want vengeance. I want truth. I just plan to make it shine." And with that, I reached for my pen and wrote one more line in my notebook. March 22nd. The trap is set. Let the liar trip on her own words. The next few days passed with an eerie kind of calm, that quiet before thunder rolls in. I kept to my routines, morning coffee on the porch, a walk to the mailbox, a phone call to Evelyn in the afternoon. On the outside, everything looked ordinary, but inside, I was watching, listening, waiting. On Wednesday, I got a text from Marcus. "Can I stop by later? Need to talk." No emojis, no heart, just words heavy enough to make my stomach drop. When he arrived that evening, I saw the storm before he even spoke. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled, his voice flat. "Hey, Ma," he said, standing in the doorway like a little boy again. "Can I come in?" "Of course," I said. "You want coffee?" He shook his head. "No, thanks." We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't touch the cookies I'd set out, just stared at his hands. "Tanya's been acting strange," he said finally. "Jumpy. She's on the phone all the time. Says it's about work, but..." He exhaled hard. "I don't think it's work, Ma. I think it's about your jewelry." I stayed silent. Let the words find him instead of forcing them out. "She told me you gave it to her," he continued. "Said you wanted her to have it while you were still around." He glanced up at me, shame flickering in his eyes. "I didn't believe her at first, but then you didn't say anything when she took it, and I thought maybe you really had let it go." I looked at my son, this grown man I'd raised with both hands and prayers, and I saw confusion fighting with loyalty. "Marcus," I said gently, "why are you telling me this now?" He swallowed. "Because yesterday she tried to sell one of the pieces at a pawn shop. Not the big diamond, a smaller gold bangle. The owner refused to buy it because it looked engraved. She came home furious, said people were conspiring against her, and then she mentioned you called Mr. Reynolds." His voice cracked a little. "She said you were trying to make her look bad, that you were lying." I leaned forward, my tone soft but steady. "And what do you believe?" He looked down. "I don't know anymore." For a moment, the silence between us felt like a canyon. "Marcus," I said, "when your father died, I promised him I'd protect you, but protection doesn't mean letting you ignore the truth." He looked up, eyes wet. "Ma, I didn't mean for this to happen." "I know you didn't," I said, "but you let it happen, and that's just as dangerous." He wiped his face. "She said she'd handle it, said she could get us out of debt if I just trusted her." "Debt?" I repeated. He hesitated, then nodded. "The car, her business loans, the credit cards. It's bad, Ma." I sighed, the weight of it pressing on my chest. "You've been drowning, baby, and she's been throwing stones instead of life jackets." He let out a small, bitter laugh. Guess I deserve that. No, I said softly. You just forgot who taught you to swim. He looked at me, broken, small. What do I do now? I took his hand. You tell the truth. To me, to yourself, and when the time comes, to the law. He froze. The law? Yes, I said, quietly. Because this stopped being a family problem the moment she forged my trust into a signature. He swallowed hard. You're really going to the police? Not yet, I said. Not until she shows her full hand, but when she does, we'll both be ready. He nodded slowly, tears streaking his face. I'm sorry, Ma. I squeezed his hand. You're still my son, but this time you'll have to help me clean the mess. When he left that night, I felt a strange peace settle over me, the kind that comes when truth finally breathes again after being buried. I looked out at the dark yard, the wind stirring the oak trees, and whispered to Charles, Your boy's coming home, just not the way we planned. 2 days later, the phone rang while I was folding laundry. It was Mr. Reynolds, his tone calm but urgent. She came back, he said. Your daughter-in-law, she's pushing hard to sell the diamond this time. My pulse steadied, not raced, steadied. I'd been waiting for this moment. What did she say? She told me her mother-in-law was sick and wanted to liquidate her assets. She even forged your signature on a letter of authorization. He paused. It's a bad copy, but still a felony. I closed my eyes for a moment, the ache deep but clean. You still have everything locked up? Of course, he said, and I recorded the conversation, as you asked. She even tried to offer me a 10% cut if I paid cash and didn't file the paperwork. That made me laugh, quiet and bitter. Greed always overplays its hand. There's more, he said. When she realized I wasn't budging, she stormed out, left her purse behind. Guess what was inside? What? A pawn ticket from another shop. Looks like she already sold a smaller gold piece, one of yours, based on the serial engraving. My fingers clenched around the phone. You're certain? Positive. I've already called my contact at the police department. Detective Harris. He's discreet. I hesitated. Do it, I said. But make sure she doesn't know. He agreed, then added. Mrs. Williams, I've seen a lot in 50 years, but I've never seen someone handle betrayal with this much grace. I smiled faintly. Grace is just patience wearing armor. After hanging up, I called Marcus. He didn't answer. A text came through instead. She's panicking. Keeps saying someone's watching her. What's happening, Ma? I typed back, Don't worry, just stay calm. The truth is catching up. By that evening, I got another call. This time from Detective Harris himself. His voice was deep, steady, and polite. Mrs. Williams, I've been briefed by Mr. Reynolds. We'd like you to come by the station tomorrow. Bring all your documentation. I'll be there, I said. Before bed, I went through my binder one last time. Every receipt, every photo, every note I'd written in my little spiral notebook. March 25th, Tanya returned to jeweler. Attempted sale with forged signature. Police notified. I tucked the binder into my purse, then glanced toward the empty vanity. A single thought came to me, cold and sharp as a diamond itself. You can polish a lie till it shines, but under the light, truth always glitters harder. The next morning, I dressed carefully. Navy skirt, pearl earrings, the few pieces Tanya hadn't stolen, and the locket Charles had given me. The engraving brushed my skin like reassurance. At the station, Detective Harris met me in the lobby. Tall man, graying beard, kind eyes. Mrs. Williams, he said, shaking my hand, you've handled this better than most people twice my age. I smiled. I've had practice. Life doesn't hand you grace. You build it. He chuckled. Well, you've built yourself a fortress. Between the documents, the recordings, and Mr. Reynolds' statement, this case is strong, but I need your consent to file a formal report. Do it, I said, and keep my name quiet for now. He nodded. Understood. We'll approach this carefully. The law moves slow, but it moves steady. When I got home, the house felt different again. Quieter, but not empty. Just waiting. And sure enough, at 9:47 that night, headlights appeared in my driveway. Tanya's SUV. She sat there for a moment before the engine cut off. The porch light caught the streaks of tears on her cheeks as she walked up the steps and knocked on my door. 3 soft knocks that carried guilt, fear, and the start of consequences. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and whispered to myself, "It's time." Then I opened the door. The knocking started soft, hesitant, like someone trying to beg without words. 3 gentle taps, then silence. I stood still for a moment, hand on the doorknob, heart steady. Not racing, just steady, like a metronome keeping time with purpose. When I finally opened the door, Tanya stood there on the porch, her hair messy, her mascara streaked down her face. In her trembling hands was the jewelry box, my box, the same one she'd taken without asking. "Mama G," her voice cracked, "please, I didn't mean for things to go this far." I didn't invite her in right away. The porch light glowed yellow across her face, highlighting every tear, every ounce of fear. "Didn't mean for what?" I asked calmly. She hesitated. "I was just trying to help Marcus. We're drowning in debt and he wouldn't ask you for help. I thought if I sold a few pieces I could buy them back later before you even noticed." Her voice was breaking between sobs. I swear I was going to fix it. But the jeweler called the police. He said something about forgery and I panicked. I don't know what to do. I folded my arms. "You could start by telling the truth." "I am telling the truth," she cried. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought you'd understand. You don't even wear this stuff anymore." There it was again. That same line that started all this. You don't need it anymore. And somehow, it stung worse, hearing it now. I stepped closer, my voice still calm but sharper than before. "You didn't take my jewelry because I didn't need it, Tanya. You took it because you wanted it. There's a difference." She looked away, clutching the box to her chest like it could shield her from her own guilt. I thought maybe it could buy us some peace." "Peace built on theft doesn't last long," I said. "Ask any woman who's ever traded her soul for security." She began to cry harder. "Please, Mama G, don't press charges. I'll fix it. I'll bring everything back." I tilted my head slightly. "Everything?" She hesitated, the kind of hesitation that reveals more than words. "What else did you take?" I asked. Her eyes darted away. "A few smaller pieces, a gold bangle maybe, but I sold them already. I can get them back, I swear." I cut her off gently. "No, Tanya, you can't. You didn't just sell metal. You sold memories. You sold years of my life, of my husband's love. That doesn't come back." She sank down on the porch step, sobbing into her hands. "I didn't think you'd fight back," she whispered. That made me pause. "Why not?" She lifted her head, her face streaked with tears. "Because everyone says you're too kind, too forgiving. Marcus said you always give people second chances." I smiled faintly. "That's true. But you see, kindness and weakness, they look the same to a fool until it's too late." Her sobs quieted. The night was still except for the crickets. Then headlights swept across the driveway. Marcus's car. He rushed out, panic in his eyes. "Tanya, what the hell are you doing here?" "She called the police, Marcus," Tanya cried. "She's going to ruin us." Marcus looked at me, torn between guilt and fear. "Ma, tell me that's not true." I met his gaze evenly. The police were called because of the truth, not because of revenge. I gave them my statement this morning. Tanya stood, her voice rising. "You're going to destroy your own son's life over a few pieces of jewelry?" I looked her dead in the eye. "No, Tanya. You did that the moment you tried to forge my name." The words hung there, heavy, final. Marcus looked broken, staring between us. "I tried to fix it," he whispered. "I told her to stop, but she wouldn't listen. Tanya turned on him. "Don't you dare blame this on me." Their voices rose, anger clashing like thunder. I didn't shout, I just stepped aside. "You both need to go," I said quietly. "The law will handle what I can't. I've already done my part." Tanya's sobs turned bitter. "You think you're winning, don't you? You'll die alone with your damn diamonds." I took a breath, calm as prayer. "Maybe, but at least I'll die honest." She flinched like the words hit her. Marcus grabbed her arm, guiding her toward the car. She fought him at first, but then went limp, still crying. When their taillights disappeared, I looked down at the jewelry box she'd dropped by the door. The lid had popped open. Inside, nestled among velvet, was the diamond pendant Charles gave me, my name engraved inside. Untouched, untamed. Still mine. I whispered into the night, "You kept it safe, Mr. Reynolds. You really did." And for the first time since this all began, I felt the weight of peace return. Not from forgiveness, but from justice. The next morning, the phone rang at 7 sharp. "Mrs. Williams?" Detective Harris's calm voice came through. "We've made progress. I think you'll want to hear this in person." An hour later, I sat across from him in his small office. Stacks of files on one side, a steaming mug of coffee on the other. He slid a manila folder toward me. "We traced your daughter-in-law's pawn receipts. This wasn't the first time." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He opened the folder. Inside were copies of transaction slips, dates, store names, item descriptions. My jewelry was listed among dozens of other entries: rings, bracelets, heirlooms. None belonged to Tanya. "She's been operating under multiple names," Harris said, "selling jewelry she's been taking from different relatives, mostly elderly clients she met through her home decor consulting business." I stared at the papers. So this was never about helping Marcus. He shook his head. "No, ma'am, it's fraud, plain and simple. We've identified at least 5 victims. Your case might help us tie it all together." I sat back, heart heavy. "She used my kindness as her mask." Harris nodded. "And your husband's foresight as her undoing." He handed me another photo, a screenshot of her signature on one of the forged forms. "Your insurance company confirmed your coverage as well. That means her attempt to sell is not just theft. It's grand larceny and insurance fraud." I exhaled slowly. I never wanted it to go this far. I just wanted my things back. "Sometimes justice goes further than we expect," he said. "You've done everything right, Mrs. Williams. We'll handle the rest." As I left the station, the air outside felt different, cleaner somehow, like the city itself had exhaled the truth. When I got home, Marcus's car was already parked in my driveway. He sat on the porch, head in his hands. "Ma," he said when I stepped out. His voice was hoarse. "They took her in." I nodded. "I know." "She called me from the car," he said, eyes red. "Said she was sorry, said she should have listened." I sat beside him. "Sorry doesn't undo what's been done." He looked at me, tears streaking down his face. "I didn't stop her. I knew something was wrong and I looked away. You should hate me for that." I reached over, took his hand and shook my head. "I don't hate you, Marcus. I pity you, because loving the wrong person can blind even a good man." He sobbed quietly. "I don't know what to do now." "You do what your father always did," I said. "You start over, honest and humble. That's how you rebuild." We sat there a long time, watching the sun move across the yard. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel haunted, just quiet, like it was resting after a storm. Before he left, Marcus turned to me and said, "You're stronger than I ever realized, Ma." I smiled faintly. I had to be, because one day you'd need me to remind you who you are. When his car disappeared down the street, I went back inside, closed the door, and leaned against it. The quiet wrapped around me like a blanket. Then I whispered to the empty room, "Charles, it's done. The truth's finally home." The air felt lighter, my chest unclenched. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman who had faced her storm and come out shining. 2 weeks passed before the house finally felt like itself again. Quiet mornings, soft light through the kitchen window, gospel humming from the radio. The kind of peace that feels earned, not given. Marcus called every few days, his voice gentler now, stripped of excuses. He'd moved out of the apartment he shared with Tanya, staying with a coworker while he figured things out. I never scolded him. He was already punishing himself in ways my words never could. One Sunday afternoon, he came by. No flowers, no gifts, no rehearsed charm, just my boy, weary but human. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his eyes heavy. "I saw her at the hearing," he said. "She didn't look the same." "People rarely do when the mask falls," I said softly. He nodded. "They said she's being charged with fraud, forgery, and theft from multiple families. She could face years." I stirred my tea quietly. The law has its way. So does God. He looked down. I keep asking myself, how did I let it get that far? "You believed in her," I said. "And believing in someone isn't a sin. But staying blind when they show you the truth, that's where the hurt begins." He swallowed hard. "You really forgive me?" "I already did," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. It means I let go of what's poisoning me." He nodded slowly, tears forming. "You're stronger than I ever realized." I smiled faintly. "No, baby, I'm just older, and age teaches you when to cry and when to clean." He laughed, a little through the tears. It was the first sound of healing between us. After he left, I sat in Charles's chair with my binder of documents. I wasn't angry anymore, just thoughtful. This story of mine had started with loss and ended with proof. Proof that foresight and faith could outshine greed. But I also realized something. I didn't want my life to end with bitterness or bank accounts. I wanted it to end with meaning. The next day, I made an appointment with my lawyer, Mr. Hinton. He'd handled my affairs since Charles's passing. A quiet, kind man who always called me Miss Gloria, even though he'd known me for decades. "I'd like to update my will," I told him. He nodded. "Of course. Any specific changes?" "Yes," I said. "I'm removing Marcus and Tanya as primary beneficiaries." He looked up. "Are you sure?" "Very," I said. "My son will have to build his own legacy now. I'm leaving the estate to a women's charity, one that supports elderly victims of financial abuse." He smiled softly. "That's poetic justice, Miss Gloria." "No," I said, smiling. "That's grace. When you turn pain into purpose." We spent the next hour finalizing papers. When I signed my name, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years, like closing a door that had let in too much cold. Before leaving, Mr. Hinton asked, "Do you want to include any personal note to your family?" "Yes," I said. "Just one line." He waited, pen poised. I said, "Tell them the difference between inheritance and legacy. One is given, the other is earned." A week later, I was tidying up when I found an old phone in the back of my dresser, one I hadn't used since before Charles passed. Out of curiosity, I charged it and scrolled through the old messages. Most were from friends long gone or reminders for appointments I never made. Then I saw one voicemail saved under an unknown number dated months ago. I pressed play. Tanya's voice came through, crisp, careless, laughing. "Girl, you wouldn't believe it. The old lady's got diamonds just sitting there. Marcus says she never even wears them. Once I sell these, we'll finally breathe again, and she'll never know." I froze. Every word echoed like a nail in wood. Final. Irreversible. I could have sent that recording straight to the police, made the case airtight. But instead, I sat there listening, twice, maybe 3 times. And then I deleted it. Not out of pity. Out of peace. Because I realized I didn't need proof anymore. The truth had already done its work. That night, I stepped onto the porch with a cup of tea and looked up at the sky. The air was warm, the crickets loud, the world still spinning, as if none of it had ever happened. Evelyn came over, her robe tied loose, slippers shuffling on the walkway. "You look like a woman who's finally sleeping again," she said. "I deleted it," I told her. She frowned. "Deleted what?" "The voicemail. Her confession." Her eyebrows shot up. "You serious?" I nodded. "I don't need it anymore." Evelyn studied me for a long moment, then smiled. "Peace looks good on you, Gloria." I laughed softly. It took a while to fit. We sat there in silence, sipping tea, watching the stars blink through the trees. Sometimes words aren't needed between women who've seen the same kind of pain. She finally said, "You ever think Charles sent you that engraving for a reason?" I smiled. "Every day." When she left, I went back inside and looked at the jewelry box on my vanity. Most of it was still gone, but that one diamond pendant sat in the middle, untouched, shining softly in the lamplight. I lifted it gently, holding it up to my face. Inside, under the light, I could see it. The engraving he'd chosen years ago, GW. Love always, CW. I whispered, always. And for the first time in a long while, I felt him there. Not as a ghost, but as strength. A month later, I stood in front of my mirror wearing a new dress. Simple navy cotton, no jewelry except for one thing. The pendant. It didn't glitter like it used to. Maybe because it didn't have to anymore. I was heading to a small community luncheon, the first event organized by the charity that now bore my name, the Gloria Williams Foundation for Women of Strength. Evelyn had insisted on helping me with the paperwork, and now a room full of women, young and old, were being supported because of what I'd lost and found again. When I arrived, they greeted me with smiles, hugs, and thank yous. One woman, gray hair, shaky hands, told me her daughter-in-law had stolen her savings. "I thought I was the only one," she said, tears brimming. I held her hand. "You're not. You're just one more woman learning her worth the hard way." By the end of the luncheon, the room buzzed with laughter and hope. I realized then that this, not the diamonds, not the justice, not even the peace, this was my real victory, turning pain into light. That evening, I came home and stood on my porch watching the sun sink low. The sky was orange and gold, the kind of glow Charles always said made everything look expensive. I touched the pendant and whispered, "You see this, baby? We didn't just survive. We built something." Inside, I wrote the final line in my notebook. April 30, everything stolen was returned, but I no longer need to hold it. What I have now can't be taken. Then I closed the book and set it beside the jewelry box. The last light of the evening hit the diamond just right. And for a moment, my name inside it shimmered back at me. And I thought, that's what strength really is. It's not shine. It's reflection. Because diamonds don't sparkle from light. They sparkle from pressure. From everything. They've survived, and so do women like me.